Hello, my name is Caryn Urbanczyk. I am a postgraduate research fellow in the departments of bioengineering and the Department of Surgery and Cancer. I am doing research on sports performance and injury mitigation in rowing, specifically in biomechanics of rowing.
And how long have you been doing that for?
I have been working at Imperial for just over 2 years.
So now looking at your educational background, what subjects did you pick? What did that look like for you?
So the American system is just a little bit different than the UK system. But in sort of your final 2 years of high school, you still get to choose the classes that you get placed into. So for my final 2 years of high school, I picked advanced placement biology as a junior, and then I picked advanced placement chemistry and regular physics as a senior. I also took pre-calculus and statistics. I chose those courses. And then I also had to take some English and some history. So become a well-rounded person as an adult.
Okay, and how did you, where you did have a choice, how did you go about choosing?
I chose, particularly on the science side, I chose my classes because those were the things that I really enjoyed. I love biology. I've been doing it for a little while now. And I really like physics. Chemistry I thought would be a transferable skill because it was sort of at the boundary between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, even at that time, I kind of knew I wanted to go in the biotech direction. So yeah, I loved all three of those classes.
So I do know that you decided you were going to go to university, so why did you pick that route as opposed to any other? And how did you pick the subject you did?
I was very lucky as a kid. My parents were incredibly supportive of the things that I wanted to do, and they were very encouraging. They wanted me to go to university, and that was something I wanted for myself too. I picked bioengineering as an undergraduate because it was kind of, again, at that intersection of the physics that I really enjoyed and the medical side. So I come from a very medical family, 2 physicians, 2 nurses, 3 nurses, and then my granddad was an engineer. So it was a great fit for me to sort of blend these worlds together that I really enjoyed.
So once you picked bioengineering, you appeared to stay there. So what did your trajectory look like in terms of your studies?
So the beginning of my university career was very much sort of basic level engineering, science, math courses. And as I moved into the upper division, you got to be more selective about the electives that you took and the research projects that you took on. So I actually did a number of different research projects in all over the board until I kind of whittled down what it was that I liked and didn't like. And after doing some chemistry-based projects, that involved lots of pipetting, and Western blots, spending far too much time in a -20 freezer. I worked out that I really liked orthopedics, and I really liked muscles and bones and how they interact with the nervous system to control motor behavior. So that was something that I then carried on into my work time. So I did research at San Diego while I was applying for my master's, and then I sort of carried that trajectory into my master's and then into my PhD, just becoming more focused sort of with every step I took. Started out really broad and narrowed down.
So was there anything in particular that influenced your decision to go into bioengineering?
Bioengineering, the combination of the engineering that I liked and the medical side really put me in that doorway. But how I got specifically to biomechanics and orthopedics was a very sort of singular guest lecture I had. I was taking solid biomechanics, and we had the chair of the orthopedic surgery department came in to give a guest lecture. And it was probably the most enthusiastic, animated talk on muscle physiology that I've ever seen. And basically at the end of that talk, I went, that is what I want to do.
Have you got any advice that you would give to students who are choosing their subjects now, whether that be GCSE or A-level or above that?
I think for high school students, it's important, it's useful to keep in mind maybe the degree you want to pursue in university, whether that's, if you're pursuing an engineering degree or thinking about it, you'd be looking at taking A-level maths and A-level physics, but it's also important not to neglect learning how to be a well-rounded adult and continuing to take the classes that you really enjoy. So if you like music, keep taking music. If you like English literature, take English literature. It makes you a more well-rounded person at the end of the day. And you can always learn biology later if you really want to. But yeah, don't limit yourself artificially.
All right, so moving on to the present, what does a day in your life look like now?
So a day in my life can be very different. I've been asked that question before, and I tend to like answering what a week looks like.
Okay.
Because some days are very heavy teaching. Some days are very heavy in meetings. Some days I will be in the lab actually running experiments. And then other days I will be sat at my computer all day shuffling Excel spreadsheets or fiddling in MATLAB or R code. So it's very dependent. I'm also working on some writing, so manuscripts for journal publications. I might do all of those things over the course of a week.
I'm needing to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way for a person to do that?
If you want to learn a new programming language, I would suggest just download it. Especially R, there is a huge online community that you can take advantage of. There's a ton of documentation for that language specifically. Just download R Studio and have at it.
And are there any things you do in particular to make efforts to have a good work-life balance?
Yeah, so I make sure that I've maintained some of my hobbies. So I'm taking a foreign language class right now, a foreign language class. I also belong to the Imperial College Choir. And then on my weekends, I spend my weekend mornings rowing. So I'm down at the Thames River competing for not Imperial Boat Club, but one of their next door neighbors. I know, blasphemous.
All right. So was there anything that surprised you about your career when you first came into it?
A little bit. I think, especially in engineering, there can be this misconception that it's a very self-focused job. So it's you working on software or you working on hardware by yourself, sort of in a vacuum. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. I spend much of my time working with other students, whether they're my students or my supervisor's students, talking with my colleagues, collaborators. Days when I'm in the lab, I am constantly talking with my athletes, their coaches or trainers that have come in with them. It is very much teamwork and team-oriented. I've also had to do quite a bit of project management. So for my thesis work, it's So as an undergrad, I think a lot of times you get assigned experiments or problems to solve, and you know that there's a solution. At the PhD level, you're not doing that anymore. You're not assigned a thing. You have developed what your thesis project is going to be, and as the PhD candidate, you're sort of in charge of managing all of that from the top down.
How do you go about managing your time? Because my time management is shocking. So, yeah, for someone who does so much as well.
I think everyone has their own method. For me, I have lots of Post-it notes everywhere. So the bottom of my monitor has several Post-it notes with things that I need to do today or things I need to do this week. One Post-it note is meetings I have to go to. And then I almost always have my Outlook calendar up to keep me accountable. Yeah, so that's my method. Some people write laundry lists of all the things so that they can actually flip back to the top and sort of see how much they've accomplished.
And so, are there any misconceptions you found other people have about what you do?
So, bioengineering is kind of special in that it is incredibly broad. So even within the bioengineering community, people might think when I tell them I do biomechanics, they might think, oh, well, you build prosthetics, or people outside of bioengineering think, oh, you must pipette all day. But I do none of those things. Weirdly, on the experimental side, I look much more like a film production than anything else. Much of my experimental work is with motion capture. So when I have subjects come into the lab, we use a markered motion capture system to record how they move around the gait analysis lab, and then I take all of that and turn it into a virtual reconstruction of them so that I can do computational modeling with it. So I don't do anything really that might be traditionally thought of as biomedical engineering. I don't wear a lab coat. I don't think I'm allowed to wear a lab coat, in fact. Definitely no goggles needed. No.
So, did you have any childhood aspirations or role models growing up?
So I had a few. I really liked science from an early age. So my parents were quick to sort of introduce me to famous women in science, be that Marie Curie, Elizabeth Black, who's the first female doctor, Florence Nightingale, famous nurse. Then, as I think every child wants to do, I also wanted to be an astronaut. To the point that when NASA had its open call for candidates, I definitely applied a few years back. So, yeah, I never gave up that aspiration.
Slightly more technically now, what does your job and your research actually entail?
So, sort of the nitty-gritty stuff that I do day to day, I deal with a lot of software code. So I've developed several pieces of custom code. So I write in MATLAB, I write in R, I write in LabVIEW for designing data acquisition systems. Let's see, what else do I do? My experimental work is all done with a Vicon motion capture system, which is a markered motion capture system. And I use EMG to collect electromyographic signals, so that's muscle force outputs from the participants that come in. I also have the centerpiece of the research that I do is a bespoke instrumented ergometer. So we collect a ton of force data through so that system has, I think, about a dozen load cells built into it. as well as rotary encoders to give us displacement. So we get to combine, basically I take all of the external kinetics from the ergometer combined with the kinematics from the motion capture system. I reconstruct it all virtually, and I use it to drive a computational model using a program called OpenSim, which was developed at Stanford and is used sort of all over the world now.
Okay. So have you faced any challenges or disadvantages as a result of being women in engineering?
So I don't feel like I've really faced a whole lot of disadvantages. I think especially here at Imperial and in bioengineering, they try really hard to aim for gender equality and are really careful about diversity and discrimination sort of writ large. Sometimes you can be the only woman in the room, which can be hard. That doesn't make what you have to say or contribute any less valuable, and there's no reason for you not to contribute. You are just as capable as anyone else in the room that you're sat with, gender aside. Outside of engineering, because I do encounter lots of other people in my day-to-day, things like that do crop up from time to time, and I find, depending on the situation, it's best to address it in that moment, because a lot of times it's just maybe a minor correction, like, hey, that's not okay to say, or I'm not comfortable with that. And most people take that information on board and make the correction. I don't think I've ever had an encounter where someone was dismissive of that, which is good. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things as I've gotten older was having female role models. So the ability to see female professors, business leaders in C-suite kind of positions.
And finally, for people who are wanting to get into bioengineering or engineering generally but have no idea where to start, what would you advise?
So for those high school students, if you think you might be interested in engineering, bear in mind the course expectations. So keep up with your math, keep up with your physics. Even if you think you might not be so great at it, just keep doing it, because engineering especially is very much about work ethic and perseverance over sort of raw talent, especially in scientific research. There will be weeks where you have to throw away whole data sets, or something has gone wrong, you have a massive systematic error, and just none of it works. The ability to pick yourself up, get back on the horse, and just say, all right, what's done is done, and move forward is really important. More specifically, if whether you're an undergraduate now or a high school student now, and you think you might be interested in research, send out an email. Email the PI of a lab. Do some digging on the university webpage.
Can I just say thank you?
Yeah.